Hello, beautiful people. This is Freedom Fighter. Thank you for tuning into our channel, Goldilocks Global Banking News. Everybody knows that Goldilocks is the #1 source for the RVGCR. People from around the world tune in to see what Goldilocks is sharing on the RVGCR. Don't miss your chance and get your latest updates every day. So like, share, and subscribe to this channel to get your daily podcast from the Goldilocks articles on the RVGCR. Brought to you by Freedom Fighter. Hello, beautiful people. This is Freedom Fighter, and welcome to Goldilocks Global Banking News. I am your host. Folks, today, Goldilocks is bringing you updates on what's happening in Vietnam, the latest. And I know a lot is coming out on Vietnam. More and more, it seems, every single day. It is what it is. Goldilocks will just go ahead and provide whatever it is. If it's from Iraq, Vietnam, the IMF, the U.S. Treasury, the World Bank, the White House, Forex. It doesn't matter. The Bank of International Settlements, whatever entity, agency, information that's relevant, that comes out on a daily basis related to the currency revaluation, Goldilocks is going to present it. So let's jump right into what Goldilocks is sharing today about Vietnam and also what's happening around the world regarding currency revaluation. Vietnam expects more talks with the U.S. next month, November, to finalize their trade deal. Did you hear that? Next month, Vietnam is expected to finalize their trade deal. The tariffs. This is tariffs. For those that don't know what trade deal is, this is tariffs. If you don't know what tariffs is, it's trade. What was all in the media several months ago? During the summer, tariffs and Trump's tariffs, right? Remember that? That wasn't too long ago. Just a couple of months ago, right? It was in the media every single day. It was important, right? Every single day. Now, this is something that Goldilocks has been saying since 2021 that was needed for the revaluation of currencies, is to have the tariffs via trade imbalances addressed. In June, July, if I recall, if my memory serves me correctly, Vietnam was one of the first countries to call President Trump to negotiate the tariff deal. They might have been number 3 or number 2 country to call. Not too long after that, President Trump made an announcement on Truth Social stating that a trade deal was complete with Vietnam and that the United States would have, in all caps, he stated, full market access to Vietnam. Quietly, several weeks after that, the Goldilocks team became privy of some information that the United States and Vietnam were still negotiating, although President Trump, in his infinite wisdom and art of the deal, to publicly state that it was complete, it actually was not. Maybe 90% of it was. What's that other 10% of the tariff deal that is relevant to the RV? I'm going to ask that question again because I want you to think. If 90% of the tariff deal between the United States and Vietnam was completed, what does the other 10% involve? I'm going to continue what Goldilocks is sharing through an article. This is directly from Reuters. Vietnam expects more talks with the United States next month, November, to finalize the trade deal. Vietnam will continue trade negotiations with the U.S. in October and November. It's expected to be finalized. The announcement was made late Wednesday, meaning last Wednesday, and a 20% tariff was imposed by the Trump administration, folks. There's other proof that the Goldilocks team has been made aware of to show in writing that Vietnam and the United States are still negotiating. Why is it so important to the revaluation of currencies? Why is this relevant to the Vietnamese dong and its value going up? As of October the 9th, United States and Vietnam are indeed in the advanced stages of finalizing a bilateral trade agreement, folks, though it has not yet been fully signed or ratified. Negotiations began in April, following President Trump's imposition of 46% reciprocal tariff on Vietnam for a 90-day pause of negotiations. See, Vietnam's imports to address the U.S. trade deficit, which the U.S. trade deficit with Vietnam was $123 billion last year. $123 billion. Remember, the leak from the April article last year, currency revaluation is likely to be a priority of the second Trump administration, large in part to the due to the overvalue of the dollar and the trade deficit. For those that have been following Goldilocks for the last period of months and years, especially the last several months, you know the importance of the trade deficit and Trump's plan related to currency revaluation. See, folks that are listening to this, this is why so many of the people that follow Goldilocks, Wiley and Freedom Fighter and the tribe, those folks that you hear, the tribe members that you hear with their bank stories every single day, are folks that are aware of what they hold and what is involved with the currency revaluation and how it works and who is actually making it happen. For those of you that are thinking you know who makes the RV happen, as someone who follows Goldilocks, they will not tell you that it's some spooky people behind a curtain. Folks, it's public information. Also, it's public information to know supply and demand of a currency is what raises its rate or moves the rate down. But there's other factors as well. There are key milestones included with this Vietnam-U.S. trade negotiation, folks. The U.S. and Vietnam agreed on 20% tariffs, down from 46%. But they're still in the midst of negotiations. Why? What's that last 10%? What does it entail? What if rates of some sort is included in those negotiations? Recent reports indicate that Vietnam ratified key elements of the trade negotiations with the U.S. the last several weeks, focusing on certain important factors. The U.S. government shutdown, folks, Goldilocks is sharing, has moved our time frame back a couple of weeks. Goldilocks is stating is if you have a wealth manager to help you watch for floats before actual rates, early possible exchange, if you will, late this year or early next year, Goldilocks is stating is it's in your best interest to get your relationships established now. This deal that right now is on the table with the U.S. and Vietnam, this trade deal, it's the third such U.S. deal after the U.K. and China as well. Part of Trump's broader push for 18 bilateral trade agreements that he wanted to have. What are the potential impacts on exchange rates? The involving trade deals, folks, is likely to encourage adjustments in exchange rates, primarily by pressuring the Vietnamese dong to allow greater appreciation, meaning movement up of the dong against the U.S. dollar. This stems from historical U.S. concerns over Vietnam's currency depreciation or devaluing their currency, which has been a stickling point with the U.S. since 2021, when the U.S. Treasury labeled Vietnam as a currency manipulator. But they later reversed that sentiment because of the reforms that Vietnam began to implement for the dong. Central banks are actively diversifying their foreign currencies, folks, their foreign currency reserves. They're building their reserves to no longer depend on the U.S. dollar in their reserves because the U.S. dollar is getting weaker. As the article leaked said by the Trump administration, currency revaluation is likely to be a priority of the second Trump administration, due in part to the overvaluing of the U.S. dollar and the trade deficit. But weakening the dollar was going to be a priority, folks. We are at that point now. These diversification demands that central banks are having on diversifying their reserves with foreign currencies could gradually raise the value of their own currencies. So as Iraq diversifies their reserves with different baskets of currencies and move away from the dependence on the U.S. dollar, it begins to allow the Iraqi dinar to become stronger because Iraq will become more dependent or utilize, I should say, the Iraqi dinar more so than the U.S. dollar. Vietnam, same thing. Diversifying their foreign currency reserves with other currencies besides the U.S. dollar, they also will rapidly beginning to utilize the Vietnamese dong over the U.S. dollar. Therefore, strengthening the U.S. Vietnamese dong over the U.S. dollar. These are the mechanisms, folks. These are some of the mechanisms that organically raise the value of a country's currency. I know. Many of you are hell-bent on believing that there is a flip of the switch and all currencies will go to a new rate. Folks, for those of you that follow Goldilocks, you know better. Continue to engage with your wealth managers. Continue to stay grounded. Continue to stay diligent. Continue to follow the facts. Continue to come into the room and Follow Goldilocks in the articles in the YouTube channel to be up to date what's going on, because that will empower you even more so that you're prepared when your wealth managers are communicating with you. I'm only speaking to those that follow Goldilocks for those that know better. Because it just makes no sense to try to convince. I think of this. There was a term that I remember many years ago when I was in corporate America. One of my managers used to he used to tell this joke. He was one of my executives in the sales department. He used to tell his sales staff, you can't climb a fence that's leaning away from you, and you can't kiss a girl that is running away from you. You can't climb a fence that's leaning away from you, and you can't kiss a girl that is running away from you. Moral of the story, folks. We're done trying to convince you of what you need to do. If you want to run away to the foo-foo, guru foo-foo land and be left out in the wilderness for when it RV does happen, that's on you. We're done puckering our lips to try to kiss you and give you sugar, when all you really want is sugar honey iced tea. Go ahead, you can have it. Beautiful folks, stay grounded. For those that are following Goldilocks and you have your relationships, stay grounded. Stay in touch with your wealth managers, as they are also, we know, are staying in contact with many of you. Be well, folks. We love you. Ciao.
Hello, beautiful people. This is Freedom Fighter. Thank you for tuning into our channel, Goldilocks Global Banking News. Everybody knows that Goldilocks is the #1 source for the RVGCR. People from around the world tune in to see what Goldilocks is sharing on the RVGCR. Don't miss your chance and get your latest updates every day. So like, share, and subscribe to this channel to get your daily podcast from the Goldilocks articles on the RVGCR. Brought to you by Freedom Fighter.